Welcome again, everyone, to the Young Alumni Commissioning Project online information session. My name is Haley Smizer, and I'm the Programming and Engagement Manager for the Center for the Arts and College of Visual and Performing Arts.
And I'm Ryan Brayton. I'm the Associate Director of Development for the College of Visual and Performing Arts.
Great. And we are very excited to have you tuning in today. As we mentioned, this session will be approximately 1 hour. Our goals are going to be to talk to you about the background of the Young Alumni Commissioning Project and the application procedures, and give you some grant writing tips. Ryan has a lot of experience with grant writing. I do as well. And so we want to make sure that your proposals are as strong as possible for submitting to the panel. So feel free to ask questions throughout. I have my eye on the chat, so at any point I will answer them. I may say, oh, we'll save that till the end, but feel free to pipe up with questions at any point, or use the raise hand feature and ask them. And then you will have my email if you don't already, and you can email me afterwards. I will plug that Adrian, our Director of Programming, and I will be having office hours over the next 2 weeks that can essentially serve as a supplement to this presentation. So once you've watched it, and if you're like, hey, I don't have any more questions, I'm ready to submit, great, go ahead and submit. But if you say, hey, I have a few more nitty-gritty questions, especially as it relates to something like, hey, could you take a look at my project budget and let me know if I'm doing this part correctly? Adrian and I are having office hours next 2 weeks, Monday and Wednesday, January 31st, that Monday, and February 2nd, that Wednesday, will be at 6:00 p.m. for anyone who's working during the day, needs it in the evening. And the week after that, February 7th and February 9th, will be at noon for anyone who doesn't need it in the evening. So there are registration links online for that on the Young Alumni Commissioning Project page. So now we'll get started. The history of the project. This is the 4th year of the Young Alumni Commissioning Project. We had 1 year of it pre-COVID, and then we had 2 years of it within COVID. Obviously, that first year, or I guess second year, came kind of in conjunction with, we thought we were granting full-blown in-person projects, and then it turned out that we had to shift a bit. So we're very excited as we look ahead, because these presentations will be slated for the 2022 and 2023 academic year. So we are hoping and keeping all of our fingers and toes crossed that we will have some in-person presentations very soon. But we look forward to receiving your proposals, whether they are an in-person or digital proposal. We have learned a ton in the pandemic, and certainly don't discriminate between in-person or digital. So as I said, this is the 4th year. The mission of the program is to really just provide support for alumni at this critical time post-graduation. It's a springboard for putting more Mason-led artistic projects into the creative ecosystem of our area. And it's really just a way to continue to provide opportunities for you to showcase your work on and off campus after graduating. So we have had winners so far in photography, film, theater, dance, and music. We have had 1 in-person exhibition, 2 digital exhibitions. These have included a photography exhibit and a nice, wonderful opening reception and gala associated with it. We have had an online film screening and discussion with director and producer. And then we've had kind of a creative Q&A session that talked a bit about the project that was done, but also laid the groundwork, so to speak, for, what I wish I would have asked if I were a student. So these presentations can take a lot of forms. Some of the ones in work right now are a full-blown concert and a staged reading. Another one is a dance film that's in progress right now. Another one, turned into this kind of multimedia theater piece that we're still figuring out too. So there's a lot of avenues for this, and a lot of ways to be creative about showcasing the project that you will use this funding for, and for showcasing kind of your artistry as an alum. So Ryan, why don't you give us a little bit of insight on eligibility?
Yeah, the funds for the Young Alumni Commissioning Project came about through a donation from a longtime supporter of the Center for the Arts. A woman by the name of Linda Gramlich passed away, and she left in her will a sizable amount of money to establish a fund to support young artists at Mason. And so that's how the Young Alumni Commissioning Project was established. And we've also received generous support from other companies like Chagall Research. So graduates of the College of Visual and Performing Arts from the last 10 years are eligible to apply for this. And that is going to be 2011. For this round, 2011 is the cutoff year. So those that graduated in 2011 or later are eligible. So you have to have an undergraduate, a graduate, or minor, or a certificate degree from the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Mason. It is okay if you were a double major at Mason. So say you majored in biology or nursing, but you also majored in the art program at Mason. That will make you eligible for this, to apply for this award. Teams are eligible to apply for this award as long as one of the team members meets the criteria of being a CVPA alum within the last 10 years. And then also Mason staff are eligible to apply as long as they have met that criteria for being an alum of the College of Visual and Performing Arts in the last 10 years. I think that brings us to funding amounts.
Yeah, definitely. So we have two different funding amounts historically for this project. So recipients may receive up to $5,000 in commissioning funds. In prior years, this has been broken up between the Young Alumni Commissioning Project Award and Young Alumni Creative Development Awards. We do our best to support as much as possible. So it is something that we ask that when you build your budget, which we'll get to later, that you build it for the $5,000 amount, assuming that you are granted that amount, but you should also create your budget to be a little bit scalable such that we can see, okay, if you didn't receive that full amount and you received a portion of it, what would that look like? And this is very indicative of the grants that we apply for from the university, from the NEA. This is a pretty common practice. So we'll get to that more in budget, but those are your general funding amounts. And then the scope of the work. So I'd mentioned this a bit in terms of, we're open to what type of presentation it is. It could be digital, it can be in person. In general, what we're looking for is a new original work of any art form or combination of art forms suitable for performance, exhibition, or screening in a Mason venue. A Mason venue can also include a digital venue, as we do have support to provide for digital presentations, should that be the route that you would like to go. The size of it, the length of it, the scope, where it takes place, content, everything is under your discretion. We do want to consider feasibility of the project. So if you come to us saying that you're planning a trip around the world in 180 days and you're going to do a documentary film of it and your budget doesn't have anything related to the travel costs, then we may question that a little bit. But we want you to dream big, and we want to support how we can. As I mentioned, the Mason venue being a traditional venue versus a non-traditional venue, really what that means is we want to be able to allow our on and or off campus audience to have some access to see your amazing work that you put in front of us. So that is really the goal there, and we can be as creative as possible. We've certainly learned a lot of ways to be flexible with the pandemic, within the digital sphere and within the how do we make these spaces performance spaces that we didn't originally think, or screening spaces or exhibition spaces. So we can be creative with you there, but we want our audiences to have a chance to see what you're putting forth. And then, yes, as I mentioned, the public presentations will be in the 2022-2023 academic year. We do have a backlog of presentations because of COVID. We have some people who say, this project is very important to be presented in person, and they've had to delay it a bit because of that. If you face any COVID-related delays in the production, creation, or presentation of it, we are very willing to be flexible on that. So while the goal is 2022-2023 academic year, we also know that we're going to be slotting in a lot for that time period. So if you require flexibility, please talk to us at the time of being selected. And then, yes, the last thing that I'll say about the scope of work is that this can be fully produced, work in progress, a talk where you use one of the tools that you purchased with the Young Alumni Commissioning Project that then helped you do your piece, kind of anything in between. The presentation part of it is where we really work together and be creative about how we want to showcase your artistry and your creative genius. So without further ado, let's get into the application criteria. What are we going to be looking at when we look at these proposals?
All right, so and I just okay, I noticed a chat notification. That is Adrian putting a link to the website for the Young Alumni Commissioning Project in the chat. So we're evaluation criteria. Why are we touching on that first before we get into the nitty-gritty of the application? So we've all, as Mason students, we've all taken the evaluations of our professors at the end of the semester, and we answer those questions and we rate them as professors. And so I teach a 1-credit course at Mason each semester, and I'm evaluated at the end of the semester. So what I do is I try to get a copy of that survey, and I go through all the questions, and I see that they're going to ask how soon does the professor respond to emails? Does the professor deviate from the syllabus? So I know how I'm evaluated. So I make sure that I frame so much of the semester in the context of that evaluation. So I don't know how many of you have had experience with grants before, but that is really the key way to frame your proposal. So there are 4 evaluation criteria for the Young Alumni Commissioning Project, and those are artistic excellence, strength of proposal, career impact, and feasibility of project. So your artistic excellence criteria. So this is based on the work samples. Does the applicant exhibit strong creative skills, technical skills related to the discipline? The strength of proposal. So this is going to be all the materials you submit. Does it exhibit a strong artistic vision, embody original creative thinking, include all the requested pieces of information in the appropriate formats? So is it a complete proposal? Does it adhere to the word count that is stipulated on the application? Are all of the file formats the correct formats that are listed on the application? The third piece, potential impact on the artist's career. So would receiving the support advance your career in any way? Does the applicant need an opportunity to launch them into the next step of their career? Will the financial and project support will it offer meaningful assistance on the creation of your new work? So are you thinking about things? Are you going to invite potential other funders to your work? Is this going to be the first time your work has been seen in front of an audience or at a prominent venue like Mason? Those are some of the elements that you can incorporate when thinking about this evaluation criteria. And the last one is feasibility of completion. So what is the likelihood that the applicants will be able to complete the project on time and on budget? Does the applicant have a track record of successfully producing work, and is the budget realistic and comprehensive? So like Haley said about, the example of traveling around the world, have you thought through your project thoroughly about how you're going to execute it? Anything is possible at Mason, but if you want to have cannons going off in the Harris Theater or waterfalls or anything like that, have you thought through all the safety protocols and all the permission you have to get to do that? So thinking through all those steps specifically within your project summary. So I believe that is all of the application criteria.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the specifics on the application, Haley, do you want to talk about the panelist makeup?
Yeah.
How we make up our panelists?
Absolutely. So this is all 4 of those application criteria will be the lens through which a panel views these proposals. So they are going to be getting essentially this exact same rubric that you just got from us. And I will say all of this information, the nitty gritty of those specific application criteria are on the Young Alumni Commissioning Project website. So you'll be able to cross-reference it when you build it, but the panel is made up of professors from the 7 CVPA departments. So these professors are going to be reading your applications. They're going to be scoring your applications based on the criteria. Each of the 4 criteria is weighed the exact same. So each makes up 25% of the score for the whole. And the thing to keep in mind with this panel is that they are interdisciplinary. So yes, while there is one person who is a filmmaker on your panel or in the School of Film, there are going to be 6 other people who aren't. So we want to make sure that when you create your proposal, that you're speaking to an interdisciplinary group and not just the expert on it. We think that this helps balance perspectives. And then ultimately that panel puts their recommendations up to our Dean, Rick Davis, who makes the final decision. So you will notice that my name wasn't on the panel, Ryan's name wasn't on the panel, and Adrian's name wasn't on the panel. That's because you're coming to us for questions and advice. We want to be an impartial body that you can come to as you build these presentations. A reason why this is the Young Alumni Commissioning Project is so that young alumni can beef up their grant writing skills, can learn how to submit a project proposal. So we want to be here for a resource. So don't worry when you ask questions in the next few weeks, come to me or Ryan or Adrian, that, oh gosh, this is going to be judged as part of it. I don't have my hands in it at all, except for getting our panel the appropriate materials from you. So please come with questions. And generally speaking, that is how the review time is structured. So before we launch into what exactly this application holds, let's talk about general grant writing tips for the reason that I just mentioned.
Yeah, so the first one here on your screen to the left, this goes without saying, read the directions, follow the instructions thoroughly. The second one, jargon. So try your best not to use jargon type language in grants. So for example, that, don't say phrases like enhance the community or build community. Talk about what specifically that means. So if we're enhancing, like when we apply for grants at Mason, when we're enhancing the community is what we're truly doing. We bring that to life and provide numbers and back that up. We're going to provide X number of students with X number of hours of music instruction per week. And that's very similar to the third point here, use more facts and adjectives. So when I'm writing about Mason, I don't just say Mason is a top ranked university. So I use facts to back that up. And I say, Mason is the largest and most diverse public university in Virginia and is a R1 research university. So that can come into play when you're thinking about your creative team and talking about accolades. Understand your audience, number 4. So as Haley mentioned, we have representatives from every academic program in the College of Visual and Performing Arts on the panel. So these are all Mason university level professors, so they know what's going on in the world. So if your project, for example, focuses on a social issue, you don't have to go at length to give background on that issue. They know what's going on in the world. And also when you're putting together your bios, if you have somebody that, for example, works at the Kennedy Center, you don't have to explain the Kennedy Center is a large venue in DC. But for example, if you have somebody that works at a prominent arts venue in another state, where the panelists might not know the name of that venue, that's something you might want to clarify and contextualize. And the 5th one here is, yes, start with the end. The evaluation criteria, start with that in mind as you think through the parts of the application. So Haley, what are the parts of the application?
Yes, thought we'd never get to it. So this application, if you scroll down just a little bit on the CVPA Young Alumni Commissioning Project website, you will see a wonderful Google form. Thank you, Adrian, for popping that in. So this is going to walk you through every single step of the application, but I will walk you through all of the pieces as well. So you'll begin with inputting your name and contact information, and then what you will be asked to provide first is a project summary. This has a maximum of 750 words, and what we're really wanting here is the what. We want you to describe and quantify the project. Why is it important to you? What makes it special? What is the timeline? That is a big one. Are you going to complete it in 5 years? Hopefully not, because we'd like it to be completed next year. But if you are, why? What's the venue or ideal presentation? How are you going to get it done? What are the production needs involved? As Ryan noted, we want to know and be assured that you have thought through most, if not all, of the pieces of this. And we want to be, enthralled by it. People want to know why you are taking your time to give us this presentation. People want to know why this is special for you to dedicate your time to it. So make sure your project summary covers all of that, and you will be good to go. Next, after the project summary, you are going to get into the creative team. This is going to be,
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. Also, Ryan, did you have anything to add about the project summary that I?
No, I think, that summed it up. I like thinking through, I know, feasibility is a big, part of this. Just thinking through, those cannons and waterfalls, and for filmmakers, if you have a thinking through your location, if you want to shoot a scene in the Capitol, if you thought through getting a permit, and so any sort of elaborate production needs, make sure you think through those.
Yeah. And, as we mentioned, the project summary is kind of the first thing that this panel is getting. So make sure that you are following Ryan's really great grant writing tips so that you can hook the panel and you're not speaking in jargon, and you're speaking to a multidisciplinary audience, and all of these things that you're going to be saying, Haley, I already know this. I don't need you to tell me it. In which case I will say, great, wonderful, move on to your creative team. So this section is 500 words max. I am not asking for every single person who potentially could be involved in the next year of your life. I am asking for your main project contributors and your main thought partners. We'd like to know who you're working with. We'd like to know if this is a one-person operation. And we want to know a little bit about them and you. This is where you put in your bio. This is where you put in their bios. This can include Mason affiliation, relevant past experience. Maybe you've got a ringer of a choreographer that you want in your project. You're dancing it and they're the choreographer. Then let us know that you have gotten the best choreographer in the land for this, and we will take that into consideration. As as you build this, please try to limit each bio to 150 words at most. We like reading about all your accomplishments, especially if it's a bunch of Mason alum, but 150 is probably enough to read about someone at this stage. We will save the lengthier bios for another time. Any other, merits that you want to provide, degree, credentials, connection to you or the project, identifying who the lead or multiple lead submitters are, will be crucial for if you are selected for this. We need to know who to be the main point of contact for everything that comes right after you've been selected. So make sure to keep that in mind when you're submitting as a team or individual.
Awesome. I think that sums it up really well. And so 500 words collectively for everyone. So about
Correct.
125-ish on average, depending on how many of how large your creative team is.
Exactly. Maybe some people only get a sentence, and that's fine too.
All right, career impacts.
Yes. So this we are keeping to 250 words max. I know that can be so limiting. You would write a million sentences about how this would impact your career, how it feeds into your larger artistic goals. Why is it timely? We are choosing a limited section size for this to follow along with other grants that you're going to see later in your life. There are a lot of sections that I wish I could write so many paragraphs on. You can ask Ryan. He is constantly the one editing my writing down. I say to him, Ryan, I've written 2,000 words, and he says, okay, I will make it 300. So it is good to figure out how to edit yourself if you don't have a Ryan to help you edit it down. And career impact is one of those areas where we're going to challenge you to edit yourself down, but still tell us about how does this impact your career? Why is this the important opportunity for you now? How does this get you to another step? I don't want to say the next step. It could be a different step. How does this feed into your larger artistic goals? What are you thinking about right now as an artist? And how does that, how do you want to communicate that to the panel?
Yeah, and thinking about how to leverage this project for connections and, if it's a film that, or a digital asset that you can share, beyond our presentation at Mason, to use as a work sample for your next grant application.
Absolutely. Which leads us to work samples, which is great. All right, take a breath. We've got some criteria for the work samples. So you will see when you get to the work samples section on the Google Doc, there are fill-in sections for the rest. It's pretty easy. You write it, you copy it, you word count it, you copy it into there, great. The work samples are different because we are asking you to upload. So we want, generally speaking, we want work samples that are relevant to the project. They have high artistic merit and production value. We are accepting any kind of sample that you want, video, text, images, sound, but unfortunately we do have a size limitation that I wish I could code my way out of, but I cannot. So you can submit up to 10. We have recommendations in the next slide for based on your type of project, how many you should submit, but you can submit up to 10 samples that are 100 megabytes each. So let's say you're submitting a video sample, that is going to be 2 seconds of your video because that's such a rich file format and data. I would recommend submitting as your attachment a PDF or document that has a hyperlink to somewhere that can better host in full form. So if you have 2 video samples that you'd like to submit, I would recommend making the upload one file, one PDF that has 2, let's say, Vimeo hyperlinks that show me the exact work samples that you want me to see. So let's say that you have to host this on a password protected platform. please put that information in the document that you upload. It's going to make it a lot easier if you make it as easy as possible for the panel. So if what you want to upload is an instruction sheet with all hyperlinks and all of the descriptions, and that is a PDF and it's just one upload, but it contains all your samples, I would be so happy, because that's the easiest thing for us to look through. We just click through all your hyperlinks. We read what you say about them. You tell us what I want you to watch from 0 seconds to 1 minute. We have it all in front of us. So that is kind of my general overview of work samples. Now let's get into the nitty gritty.
The next slide.
Yeah. So generally speaking, for each work sample, we don't want to come into it blindly. We would like to know, when was it created? Ideally, if you can provide us work samples in the last 3 to 5 years, I'll say, because obviously COVID means creation was halted for some. I would generally say, show us your most recent work samples. But again, we understand COVID and non-COVID reasons why work samples may not be from the past 3 years. So provide a brief description, creation date. How is it relevant, reflective of, indicative of the work that you can do in your proposed project? Don't let us draw the lines. Give us a sentence where you put it together for us, because we may assume incorrectly. Like I mentioned, time codes and passwords as applicable. And I mentioned the file size already. So please consider hyperlinking if you think that the file size will be restrictive for you. At any point, if you run into any issues or if you have any accessibility needs related to filling out the application, uploading the application documents, please let me know. We are willing to work with you on any of this, especially as it relates to your needs for access to certain things. So now I'm going to break it out by discipline, and I will let you know that we created this with our panel of faculty experts from last year. We had a lot of feedback about how a one-size-all method does not fit, and one-size-fit-all method does not fit and does not work for everyone. So we worked really hard on trying to figure out what would be best for each of the disciplines. If you can adhere to this year, and if you think that this is indicative of your best work samples for it, I am so happy. It means we've done well. If you do not think this is indicative, talk to me. Let's discuss where we can find a middle ground to make it indicative of your caliber of work. So for film, dance, theater, and music applications, we are limiting you to 2 work samples because we anticipate that these are going to be robust samples in the form of a film clip, a video, sheet music, a script, some choreography video, something that is going to give us a very robust view of it. So we are limiting this to 2 work samples for those disciplines and 10 total minutes. We do ask that if you submit something that is more written, so script, sheet music, or lookbook, that the other sample that you provide us is a sound or video file, just so that we can have a good balance. And we aren't assuming that everyone on the panel, for example, reads sheet music and that's all that you give us. So again, that is for film, dance, theater, and music applications. For visual art applications, you are to upload up to 10 images. You don't have to do all 10, but we would like to understand kind of a glimpse of your collection, so to speak, as it is relevant. And for visual artists, sometimes 2 samples is hardly indicative of their work. So we would like up to 10 images, and please include the relevant descriptions as it's related to them, which again, for each work sample, you should provide a brief description, creation date, that sort, but make sure that it's couched within that document or those images. For game design applications, this is where it gets a little bit different as well. You all should know how to do a formal pitch document. If not, please contact me and I have some examples that I can provide you. This is going to be limited to 1 to 4 pages. This is going to include some portions of what has already been covered in the project proposal. Don't feel bad about essentially taking the project proposal and putting it on page 1, your summary page of the formal pitch document. But the formal pitch document will include more robust information than this, as you have been instructed in many of your game design classes. We would also like a video recording that demonstrates the relevant gameplay or story, but this doesn't have to be from your current project if you haven't created it yet. Obviously, if it's still in design phase, show us something that you've done before. These are work samples, so they are not necessarily supposed to be indicative of this current project. They're supposed to be indicative of the caliber of your work as a whole. So if you don't have something from this current project because you're like, Haley, I'm waiting on funding to begin this project, don't worry. You can show us what you've done in the past. For game design, I will say there is an option for you to submit a full-blown game demo. If you have gotten to the design phase of it, submit a demo. It is optional. We do ask that you have an executable package for both Windows and Mac and instructions to go along with it, but our panel will review that if you submit it alongside. So we've heard about the work samples. It's a lot, but I promise, the goal of creating a robust option for your work samples is so that we can see your amazing work and we can be better guided on what you can do and what you will do with all of this funding. So enough about work samples.
I have one word to add.
Yeah.
And that is hyperlink.
Yes.
After all that, I'll just say that one word. So try to default to hyperlink if at all possible. And the budget.
Yeah. Yes. So we've got your budget. That is yet another upload as part of this. So you will see when you click on the application. Oh, sorry. And Adrian said, and don't forget those passwords. We would be very sad if you do all of the amazing work in your work samples to hyperlink and do all the things that we've asked and you don't give us the password so we can't see it. It would be the worst. So please, all of the above. And if you have any questions, we have office hours in the next 2 weeks for you to ask us. So budget is the final piece of the puzzle here. So you will see on the Google form that there is a downloadable budget example. We ask you to use this. It makes it a lot easier to review all the budgets in the exact same format. Promise it'll make your life easier too, especially if you don't have that much experience with creating a budget. So the things to note about the budget are that we want to have the panelists see the estimated expenses and revenue and see your budget notes. We want to see a whole project budget, knowing that your project could be more than $5,000. We want to see how our support plays in, but we want to know, okay, income line, you have $5,000 from Young Alumni Commissioning Project, but you also have, let's say, crowdfunding, let's say other grants, let's say ticket revenue. You've got the other pieces of the puzzle that fall into income. So as many of us have learned in a budgeting 101 class, income and expenses, we want to try to get them to match in this budget projection, because that's what this document is that you're uploading. It's a projection. We can't hold you to it. We can't say for sure that this is exactly what it is, but for us to understand the feasibility of completion, we have to know that you are thinking about this in the correct terms and you're not saying, oh, I'm going to buy this piece of equipment for $100 and we look it up and it's $1,000 equipment. So we want you to really put some research into this budget. So for your expenses, as I mentioned, tangible items such as equipment, expenses also include labor. They include artist fees. There are software and services. There are marketing expenses. Sometimes if you have a crazy plan an idea for marketing. If there are calculations needed, so, you want, as the example here, you want a video editor, you're going to pay them $500. How'd you get that breakdown? Well, you said, I am going to pay a video editor that will accept $50 an hour. I will pay them for 10 hours of work. And that's how. We want to know exactly what you're thinking with the budgeting. So one kind of piece of the budgeting puzzle that I want you to keep in mind is that CVPA will pay for the production and marketing costs to present the work. So this includes a production crew to run the show, assuming that it is in a Mason venue. So we obviously can't bring our production crew into the Anthem in DC, but we have our own venues and we have production crew as part of it. We can pay for the front of house, the ushers, that sort of thing. And as I mentioned before, if we're going the digital route, we can pay for the streaming platform. We have that option, and our digital stage managers. We will pay for the marketing to put it on our website, on our social media. If there are expanded marketing ideas that you have that involve ads and placement in newspapers and online magazines, flyers, posters, that sort of thing, we will want to see those aspects, but everything that you can consider from an internal Mason marketing. So your peer-to-peer marketing, your story in the George, your email blasts about it, all of that is completely covered. So that means that you are expected to pay for the artist fees, space rental, if there are spaces to rent that are non-CVPA, costumes, let's say there's travel, hospitality, catering. You've got people working a 12-hour day. You're going to feed them? I hope so. I always like to be fed on 12-hour days. If you have questions about this breakdown in terms of like, okay, well, I'm paying for a lighting designer for my theater piece, but does that mean I need to pay for a lighting operator? Ask me these questions. And another big point in the budget is if you are starting to build out some of your expenses of, I'm going to borrow this equipment from this department or this friend or this professor, make sure that you have at least mentioned it to them. We are not saying we need written confirmation from them, but we do need to know that you have thought about asking the department and that you have done the due diligence to understand whether it is even possible for you to do this. We have representatives from all the departments on the panel, and we don't want them necessarily to be like, I've never heard of an alumni being able to do this. So do your due diligence, look into what's possible with the budget, and make sure that you start to ask those questions. So as I mentioned, the project expenses could exceed 5,000, will exceed 5,000. Talk about how you'd make up the difference and give us a little note as to whether that's pending or confirmed. It's going to go a really long way if you mention to us, yes, here's my income statement, 5,000 from Young Alumni Commissioning Project and 10,000 from crowdfunding that I've already done. That's going to give us a really good sense of what you've already put into this project. As I mentioned, don't just assume you can use Mason resources, do your due diligence and check. Artist fees, research industry standards, and then have a contingency plan. So while we would like to give everyone the largest amount of money possible, we don't have that generous of funding. We have quite generous funding, but not quite that amount. So make sure that you tell us if you were to get less than $5,000, how would you scale this? What items from your budget line would be taken? How many hours would X, Y, or Z go down? So we want to see that in the budget notes section. And that is very important to us so that we can understand, is this a project that is make or break for 5,000, or could we still see a way that this could be completed if we award less than that? And then the last thing I'll note about the budget also has to do with the budget notes. So when you talk in the budget notes, which you'll see as a separate tab when you download the budget form from the Google Doc, there's a budget tab in Excel, and then there's a separate tab that talks about notes that you'll fill in. If there's something that isn't easily explicable, so if you are purchasing equipment of some sort, or if you're saying, I want to buy a computer for this or something, give us a little note as to why you're doing it. We can assume, we can guess, but we want to know, because otherwise we are a questioning people, and we are going to question, well, why that camera exactly? Or why this computer? Or is that really going to serve your exact needs? Have you thought about XYZ? So you might as well tell us exactly why, if you're buying a piece of equipment, what you hope to use it for, even if that means using it for something beyond the scope of just this project. Even if you're saying, I am committed to paying X amount of money as part of this budget for this piece of equipment that will help this project and the 5 to follow, because it is that good of a piece of equipment. So again, we hope that you put a good bit of your budget towards paying artists. We hope that you pay your creative team and yourself, because that is very important for the arts ecosystem. But we know that equipment also falls into it. So consider that, and keep that in mind, and ask us questions about your budget during office hours. Whew, budget done. Should we talk about anything else related to budget or the whole application?
So I'll chime in with some just helpful exercises and some final tips to wrap us up, so we have enough time for questions.
Yeah.
And I see we have just paying attention to our chat here. Adrian brought up a very good point. Income meeting expenses. So on your budget, do make sure that your income meets all of the expenses. So we start with our expenses first and think about how much we need to spend, and then think through your income. You could do it the other way around. We usually do it with expenses first, and then figure out where the money is going to come from. So make sure that those two numbers even out. And some final tips. So two quick exercises. So first one on the left, pre-writing exercise. Explain your project to a friend and just have a candid, friendly conversation, and then it helps you really articulate the vision and articulate how you will present it in a grant, or if you have to present it to verbally to a panel someday. It really helps you think through all the nuances and all the details. And then once you're done writing, have another friend or colleague read the proposal who doesn't know anything about your project, to see what questions they have, so they can look at it with fresh eyes and see what makes sense and what could use some clarifying. Some last minute resources. So two books that I really recommend for this work. The Artist Guide, my Zoom is covering up the title. The Artist Guide to Grant Writing by Gigi Rosenberg. It's one of the best grant writing books on the market for artists. And then the other book is the only grant writing book you'll ever need, but it's actually not the only grant writing book you'll ever need, because you'll want to read Gigi Rosenberg's book. But this is an excellent book. This is the 3rd edition, but there's probably at least the 5th edition out at this point. And it's excellent. It goes through all the technical aspects of applying for a grant, and it's really geared toward organizations, but it's relevant for individual artists as well. And then some virtual resources. Grantspace.org is an excellent resource. It is a compilation of grant trainings. There's paid workshops and free workshops, and they're available by subject area, and there are workshops for the arts. I think they even drill down for like filmmakers and musicians. And then there are paid resources where you can search for grant opportunities. So I highly recommend that. New York Foundation for the Arts is another great one. It's a portal similar to Grantspace, but it's really geared toward the arts. And Creative Capital is a similar organization to New York Foundation for the Arts. It is an organization that really focuses on artist career development. So they're really in the business of doing this type of Young Alumni Commissioning Awards. There's several awards per year, and they also do a whole bunch of training sessions, like tax implications for artists, and establishing a 501c3. So I highly recommend that one. And then last but not least, serving on a grant panel. There is no better way to really understand what it's like to be on the other side of the table than serving on a grant panel. And you'll really appreciate the need to tell a story, but do it in a very concise way that's very easy to digest. I have served on a DC Commission panel, and they give you about 40 applications that these are very comprehensive applications that can be 20 pages each, and that's not including the budget and all of the supporting documents like the work samples. And so thinking through what it's like to be a panelist when you have a pot of money and you just need to drill down to the specifics to know exactly what the applicants want and how much money you can award, it really helps you think like a grant writer. So I believe that brings us to the end, and now it is time for questions.
Yeah, I will, before I stop the recording and let the folks in this Zoom room pepper us with questions, I will plug two final things, which is the due date. This grant project application is due Friday, February 11th at 11:59 p.m. If that
Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time, thank you very much. If that clock strikes midnight or beyond, I am not able to accept it, no matter how much I wish that I could. That is when it is cutting off, and we are not allowed to look at it any further. If you are worried about getting yours in on time, or if you're worried about a technical glitch or having backups to something, maybe make the deadline in your mind February 10th at 11:59 p.m. so that you have one full day to ask me questions. So this is the online form submitted, the work samples uploaded, the budget uploaded, everything. February 11th, midnight, 11:59 p.m. I will not, unfortunately, be able to accept it after that point. And then the one last thing I wanted to say is that if you are not selected this year, we have been doing this for 4 years now. We plan to continue doing this. And what we will offer for those who are not selected this year is a feedback panel. So you can meet with me or Adrian to discuss afterwards. It is sometimes a little bit painful to hear the feedback. You work really hard and you're very proud, but it always makes your applications better for the future. There have been many times when I know Ryan and Adrian have sat in grant feedback sessions to things that they haven't received. I always say that you should say yes to those opportunities, even if it stings a little bit. But we had, a ton of applications last year. We look forward to receiving all the applications this year. And we want this to be a resource that you continue getting better for when you eventually apply to something at DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, and you apply to an NEA grant, and you get that because of this foundation. So due date February 11th. Contact me with questions. My email is right here. I'm going to sign off on the recording, but for those of you who are still in this room, stay and we can ask questions. Thank you, everyone.